Movies about movies. Today, a movie about a movie that was never made. Hi, today's movie is called Jodorowsky's Dune. It's directed by Frank Pavich. You may know a film of Dune made by David Lynch. This is not that. You may also know a TV miniseries of Dune. This is not that either. This is Jodorowsky's Dune, the one that was never made. I guess I should say something about Dune and then something about Jodorowsky. But before I even get that far, let me say something about making movies. So that'll be a three-part introduction. Then we'll get to the movie. Filmmakers, I think you know, chunk the work into three big phases. There's pre-production, which is everything you do in advance of shooting, all the planning before the cameras run. There's production, which is when you put the actors in front of the camera and the microphones. And post-production, everything necessary to turn raw footage into a finished movie. Most movies about movies love to focus on the middle part, production, because that's where all the sexy people show up, and the crew and the equipment, and there's all this hustle and bustle and a guy calling action. But what many filmmakers will tell you is that it's actually pre-production that's the most critical phase of the work. That's where you make all your big choices. The story, the words, the budget, the look, the crew, the cast. Alfred Hitchcock repeated this in countless interviews. His pre-production planning was so meticulous and thorough, it encompassed virtually all of his creative work. He said he found production, actual production, a chore. He once said, "I wish I didn't have to shoot the picture." Well, since it's so critical, you'd hope that pre-production would be the topic of a great movie about movies. But people are always drawn to production. It's the magnet, all the sexy people, action, tension. Unless, of course, the movie never gets into production. Then the only thing you can talk about is pre-production. And that's one of the reasons Jodorowsky's Dune is so valuable. It's fascinating to watch someone figure out the movie he wants to make and then assemble the team that can help him make it. So, part 2 of the intro. What is Dune? Part 3, who is Jodorowsky? Dune is a novel by Frank Herbert, published in 1965. It lays claim to being the most successful fantasy science fiction book ever published. When it came out, it won both the Hugo and Nebula Awards. It sold 12 million copies, by some counts 20 million. It's also spawned a universe of sequels, prequels, adaptations, video games, comics. And yet it never quite attained the iconic pop culture status of Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, with which it's often compared. Everyone knows planet Krypton, planet Alderaan. Not everybody knows planet Arrakis, or the Bene Gesserit, or the Gom Jabbar, or Stillsuits. Dune is a very heady mix of ruthless politics, warring families, revolution, mysticism, ecology, sex, betrayal, fantastic creatures, vehicles, and architecture, and charismatic messianic leadership. And what made it especially interesting in the 60s and 70s, and even today, it's about a substance known as the spice, or melange, which not only powers visions, but also somehow enables deep space travel. Jon Michaud wrote last year in The New Yorker, "Imagine a substance with the combined worldwide value of cocaine and petroleum. You'll have some idea of the power of melange." People who love Dune really love it. I will never forget the fire in the eyes of the guy who handed me a copy and commanded me to read it. Kind of like LDS or Jehovah's Witnesses. That's Dune 101. Jodorowsky 101 follows. Alejandro Jodorowsky, born in Chile, circus clown, comic book writer, filmmaker, playwright, mystic, and charmer. Irresistible charming. He's 85 years old now, still making films, still making mischief, still making revolution. Jodorowsky's early low-budget, very trippy films attracted the attention of a French producer who said, "I want to be in business with you. I will help you finance a picture. What do you want to make?" And not having read it, but knowing its reputation, Jodorowsky said, "I'd like to do Dune." Jodorowsky's Dune is the inspiring, sometimes heartbreaking story of what happens next. The tagline, the greatest science fiction movie never made. Jodorowsky wanted his film to be revolutionary and inspiring. As he says in the trailer, a film that gives LSD hallucinations without taking LSD. He wanted to make more than a movie. He wanted to make an indelible impact on the audience. He wound up with a cast that included Orson Welles, Mick Jagger, Salvador Dali. But I'm getting ahead of the story. I'm getting ahead of myself. Jodorowsky immediately cast his son, who was 12 at the time, to play Paul Atreides, the charismatic Muad'Dib, at the very center of the story. He immediately set the boy on a course of bodybuilding and martial arts training with the idea that a few years down the road, when he was ready and the cameras rolled, there he would be, a credible teenage hunk of a warrior to set in front of the lens. That alone should show you how devoted, not to say fanatic, Jodorowsky was about this picture. And he set about assembling a production, design, and effects team. Here's where it really starts getting interesting. Jodorowsky found H.R. Giger and Dan O'Bannon, who were later engaged by Ridley Scott to respectively write the script and design the creature for Alien. He engaged Jean Giraud, who worked under the name Mobius, to help him visualize and storyboard the movie. Mobius was a skilled, unusually fast draftsman. What's fascinating about hearing Jodorowsky tell this story is how at every stage the universe just seems to present him with the perfect person, the one person he needed to push his vision forward to the next stage. His stories of pursuing, wooing, signing such giants as Orson Welles, Mick Jagger, Dali, even Pink Floyd have a giddy sense of magic fate. Jodorowsky's pre-production odyssey resulted not only in this team of warriors, but also a 1,000-page storyboard and production plan. It's a blueprint for a 12-hour movie. In the days before cable miniseries, that might have been enough to doom it right there. No studio agreed to finance production and distribution of Dune. And there it sat until last year, when Frank Pavich released Jodorowsky's Dune, gave us a very tantalizing glimpse of what might have been. Pavich tells his story through interviews, animations, and generous peeks into the amazing Dune storyboard. If you know and love Dune, if you know and love Jodorowsky, if you know and love film, or if you just have a thing for charming octogenarians, see this picture, Jodorowsky's Dune. Next up, movies about Frankenstein and Dracula. Until next time, I'm Mickeleh. DVD extras. Now, even though Jodorowsky never got to make his version of Dune, you have very likely seen some of the work created for it. A fascinating sequence compares frames from Mobius's original storyboards to action scenes in Star Wars. Another compares Giger's designs for Dune to the creatures and structures he designed for Alien and for Prometheus. Jodorowsky's Dune had limited engagement in film festivals and a few cities beginning last year. It's still touring in the United States. You can catch it on the big screen if you're in the right place at the right time. I will link to the schedule. But on July 8th, 2014, this week, it's out on Blu-ray and for streaming in the US and Canada. I hope other countries will follow soon. Here's the trailer for Jodorowsky's Dune. Here are my previous movies about movies. And in the description, an article from a year ago in the New Yorker, Why Dune Still Matters by Jon Michaud, and a link to future big screen showings of Jodorowsky's Dune. Find out when it's playing in your town. Bye now.